Michaela Anderson stood frozen in her kitchen, her fingers clenched around a crumpled receipt from Cafe Luna. Her heart pounded as her eyes traced the date and time, proof that Jason had lied. Again, he leaned casually against the doorway, smirking, telling her she was overreacting, imagining things. Like always, for years Jason had chipped away at her confidence, twisting her instincts into mental instability, casting doubt on every observation she made. She once exposed CEOs and crooked politicians. Now she couldn't trust her own memories. But this slip of paper, the receipt, was real, tangible, undeniable, a breadcrumb in a trail of deceit. This wasn't just about a lunch date. It was about years of emotional manipulation, career sabotage, and something darker she couldn't yet name. Jason thought she was unraveling, but what he didn't know was that Michaela, the journalist he'd tried to bury, was waking up, and she was about to uncover everything. Before Jason, Michaela Anderson was known as one of the sharpest young investigative reporters in Houston. At 34, she had already made a name for herself at the Chronicle. Her coverage of local corruption and white-collar crime earned her awards, front-page features, and the admiration of her peers. She had a knack for seeing what others missed, reading between lines, chasing patterns no one else thought to connect. Editors called her fearless. Sources trusted her. She was, as her editor Rachel once said, a bloodhound with a notepad. Then came Jason Winters. She met him at a charity gala she was covering. Tall, confident, dressed in a charcoal suit, Jason introduced himself as a financial advisor who was a huge admirer of good journalism. He bought her a drink, complimented her tenacity, and laughed at all the right moments. When he called her a beautiful force of nature, brains and ambition wrapped in elegance, she blushed. It had been a long time since someone made her feel seen, and Jason seemed to say all the things she didn't know she needed to hear. Their courtship was fast and lavish. Jason sent flowers to her office, took her to rooftop dinners, and made her colleagues swoon. Rachel, though, was cautious. "Be careful," she'd warned one afternoon. "The men who go over the top in public often have something to hide in private." Michaela waved it off as workplace cynicism. She was in love. Jason was supportive, kind, generous, or so she thought. Shortly after they moved in together, Jason started dropping comments about her job. At first, they sounded like concern. "You're working too hard. You've been so anxious lately. That last story nearly broke you." When the senior investigative reporter position opened up, Michaela was the frontrunner. But Jason urged her to decline. "It's too much stress. We won't even have time to breathe." She hesitated. Rachel was furious, but Michaela gave in. That decision marked the beginning of a slow erosion. Her weekly mentoring sessions with Rachel became sporadic. Her confidence wavered. Jason questioned her memory constantly. When she spotted him across the mall one afternoon, he insisted she was mistaken. When she thought she saw his car at another woman's apartment complex, he laughed. "You're starting to sound paranoid." Eventually, she started believing him. Michaela kept her old reporting journals locked at her desk at work instead of bringing them home. She also kept a small personal savings account, one she never told Jason about. She wasn't sure why at the time, just that it felt necessary. Over the years, she stopped pitching big stories. Every time she got close to something impactful, Jason found a way to shake her confidence. His timing was always impeccable. And then came the receipt. Cafe Luna, dated that day, folded and half-tucked under the kitchen counter. Jason had claimed he was at meetings all afternoon. She remembered seeing him there, with Sarah, his coworker. He'd dismissed it, told her she was making things up again, but the receipt proved it. He was lying, and for the first time in months, she felt something click. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a pattern. Instead of confronting him, Michaela placed the receipt in her wallet, right next to a worn business card Rachel had given her long ago. On the back, Rachel had scribbled, "When you're ready to talk, I'm here." Michaela was ready, and she wouldn't be gaslighted anymore. Michaela left early the next morning, heart pounding and questions swirling. She went straight to Cafe Luna instead of the newsroom. The same barista from the week before smiled at her. Michaela forced a casual tone. "Hey, Has a tall guy named Jason been in here lately? Usually with a woman, Sarah, I think. The barista chuckled. Oh yeah, they're regulars, always. The words slammed into Michaela like a wave. Jason hadn't just lied. He was a regular here with Sarah. She wasn't imagining things. She never had been. She ordered a coffee, trying to keep her hands steady. As she waited, 2 women at the counter giggled over a phone screen. Did you see Sarah's Instagram? One asked. She called Jason her work husband again. They look so cozy at their usual table. Michaela nearly dropped her cup. She pulled out her phone and searched Sarah's profile. It was private, but the profile photo said enough. Jason and Sarah, laughing together in front of the Café Luna sign. That was the photo in her head. It hadn't been imagined. It had been real all along. Back at the office, she tried to focus, but news traveled fast. Rachel was being let go. Officially, it was budget cuts. Unofficially, whispers filled the newsroom. She'd made the wrong enemies with her latest story on corporate corruption. Michaela's stomach twisted. Jason had recently joined the charity board Rachel had been investigating. He'd even made vague comments about journalistic ethics and how some people take their reporting too far. Was this more than betrayal? Was it sabotage? Jason texted her later that afternoon. Hope you're not still upset about yesterday. You know how you get when you're stressed. Love you. Michaela stared at the screen, her fingers curling. It was the same tone he always used. Warm on the surface, but soaked in condescension, as if he were trying to take care of her while planting the idea that she was the problem. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened the drawer of her desk and pulled out her old notebooks, dozens of entries from the past 3 years. Every time she'd suspected something, every time he'd convinced her she was imagining it. There were patterns, entries full of red flags she hadn't wanted to see, arguments that left her feeling confused. Moments when she thought she'd caught him in a lie, only to apologize afterward, sure she'd misunderstood. Now, she didn't just see chaos, she saw consistency, a strategy. That evening, Michaela downloaded a voice recording app to her phone. From now on, every conversation would be documented. Every denial, every deflection, every accusation. She wasn't going to argue anymore. She wasn't going to beg for honesty. She was going to build a case. The journalist in her had never disappeared. She'd just been buried under years of doubt and manipulation. But now, with her instincts sharpening and the evidence stacking up, Michaela knew Jason had underestimated her. And that was his first mistake. The next morning, Michaela received a text from Rachel. Crossroads Diner, 7 a.m. Trust me. Michaela arrived early, her recorder already rolling in her purse. But when she walked in, her breath caught. Sarah was sitting beside Rachel in the corner booth. Michaela slid into the seat, heart pounding. I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow, Sarah said softly. But there are things you need to know. About Jason, about the firm, about you. Rachel placed a small USB drive on the table. Financial records, emails, text messages. He's been laundering money for months, funneling it through shell corporations. Sarah nodded. And using your reputation as cover. Every time you got close to a real story, Jason derailed you. Told you your instincts were broken. You weren't losing your touch, Michaela. He was making sure you gave up before uncovering anything. Michaela's mouth went dry. But the therapy, my records. Rachel reached for her hand. He has them, all of them. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. Dr. Martinez is his cousin. He's been feeding Jason transcripts of your sessions for 2 years. That wasn't therapy. It was surveillance. Michaela's stomach turned. Her most vulnerable confessions, her fears, her doubts, they weren't safe. They had been ammunition. We showed those records to the board, Rachel added. Said you were delusional, that I was investigating pieces. Michaela stared at the USB drive, rage rising through the shock. So all of it, The grand gestures, the compliments, the concern. It was a setup. You weren't his wife, Sarah said bitterly. You were his shield. He needed someone unstable in his life, someone he could blame if things went wrong. Michaela exhaled slowly, her hands trembling. Can I get a copy of everything? Rachel nodded. We'll back it up on a secure drive. Michaela made copies that evening while Jason was at the gym. She sat at her desk, going through each file. Wire transfers, falsified invoices, inter-office memos Sarah had forwarded. The conspiracy was vast, layered, and coldly calculated. When Jason walked in, she smiled at him like nothing had changed. You okay? He asked, reading her face. Tired, she replied sweetly. Actually, I've been thinking. Maybe we should invite your parents over for dinner. I'd like to talk to everyone about getting help. He stared at her for a second, and then a satisfied smirk tugged at his lips. That's very mature of you, honey. I'll call them tonight. Michaela nodded, the mask on her face flawless. Jason believed he had won, that she was slipping deeper into doubt, that she would fold quietly. But she wasn't slipping. She was standing. Behind her calm voice and quiet eyes, she was assembling a trap of her own. And for the first time in years, Michaela Anderson wasn't afraid of what she knew. She was ready to expose it. The next afternoon, Michaela's inbox pinged with a new message. It was from the board of directors at the newspaper. Subject line, urgent discussion regarding employee mental fitness. Her stomach dropped. The message was vague, but requested her presence at an emergency meeting that same evening. No explanation, no details, just concerns have been raised about your recent behavior. She raced to Rachel's office. Rachel was already on a conference call with HR. I've received anonymous complaints, Rachel whispered, muting the mic. And Jason, he sent them video clips. Michaela's throat tightened. From therapy? Rachel gave a grim nod. He's trying to bury you before you can speak. The walls seemed to close in. If the board believed Jason's version, that she was unstable, paranoid, emotionally compromised, everything she had gathered would lose credibility. The story, the evidence, the truth, all silenced by a smear campaign. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number. The message read, "Need to talk. Important. Clara Winters." Clara, Jason's mother. Michaela texted back immediately, agreeing to meet. The cafe was only a few blocks away. She had 40 minutes before the board meeting. It was risky, but she needed answers. Clara was already seated when Michaela arrived, her posture tense, a designer handbag clutched tightly in her lap. Her eyes darted toward the cafe window before she leaned in. I found something, she said, voice low. She pulled an old leather planner from her bag and laid it gently on the table. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, account numbers, and flowcharts. Michaela's eyes scanned the pages, offshore accounts, shell corporations, falsified donations, and a familiar name. Robert Winters. My husband started this, Clara said, her voice trembling. Jason just perfected it. Michaela looked up, stunned. I've been doing this for decades, Clara whispered, using women, wives, girlfriends as emotional scapegoats. I was Robert's unstable wife once. Now you're Jason's. The truth settled over Michaela like ice. Jason hadn't invented this web. He'd inherited it. Clara looked down at the planner. I stayed quiet for years, she said. But when you mentioned deceptive practices at dinner, I started wondering. Maybe you weren't the problem. Maybe I wasn't either. Michaela pressed record in her purse without hesitation. I need you to tell them everything, she said gently. I'm going into that boardroom tonight, and, if you're willing, I want you with me. Clara hesitated. Then slowly, She nodded. "I won't let him do to you what Robert did to me," she said. "Not again." They walked into the newspaper building together 20 minutes later. The boardroom was tense. Jason was already there, standing beside a projector screen, playing carefully edited clips from Michaela's therapy sessions. The board members watched with furrowed brows. Robert sat silently among them, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Michaela," Jason said smoothly, "we were just discussing your episodes." Michaela didn't flinch. "Yes, I can see that." She walked straight to the laptop and plugged in her USB drive. "But I think the board might want to see another episode, one with actual context." The screen changed. Financial spreadsheets, wire transfers, emails, Sarah's testimony, Michaela's recordings. And finally, Clara's planner. Robert jumped to his feet. "What is this?" Clara didn't blink. The truth. As Clara laid bare the generational pattern of fraud and abuse, Michaela watched Jason's expression shift from smug to pale. He had underestimated her. Again. And now, she wasn't just his wife. She was his reckoning. The boardroom fell into a tense silence as Michaela stepped forward, USB drive in hand, Clara walking beside her. Jason looked up, his smirk faltering when he saw his mother. Robert shifted uneasily, arms crossed, as if bracing for impact. "I have something to share," Michaela said, plugging the drive. Jason interjected quickly. "She's emotionally unstable. You've all seen the clips. This isn't the first time she's imagined." Michaela didn't even look at him. She opened the first file. It was audio. Jason's voice, calm and smug, layered with condescension. "Baby, you know how you get. You're remembering it wrong again." Click. "Rachel was never your friend. She wanted your job. I protected you." Click. "You'd just listen to me. You wouldn't be so confused all the time." The room stayed silent. Michaela spoke evenly. "What you just heard, that was my reality for 5 years." She clicked the next file. Screenshots of emails, bank records, and conversations between Jason and Sarah, laying out his manipulation and offshore transfers. She paused the screen and turned to face the board. "You were almost part of a cover-up. Jason used me as a shield to protect his laundering scheme. He targeted Rachel to eliminate a watchdog, and he's been doing it with Robert's blueprint." Gasps followed. Michaela looked to Clara. "I wasn't his only victim. Neither was Sarah. And Clara? She's lived this cycle before." Clara stepped forward, voice shaky but steady. "Decades ago, Robert convinced this board I was delusional. He took my silence and made it into proof. But I kept notes, records, for the day someone else, someone braver than me, would finish what I couldn't." She opened the old leather planner. Each page was scanned into Michaela's file. Illicit partnerships, hidden assets, shell corporations set up in both Robert's and Jason's names. Years of financial deception, masked as corporate strategy. Rachel stood near the door, holding the signed affidavit from Sarah and sworn declarations from Clara. Michaela faced the board. "I didn't come here to beg. I came here to restore the truth." Jason stood up abruptly, his voice rising. "This is a setup. She's spiraling. Can't you see what she's doing? She's using my mother, an unstable woman, to..." The double doors swung open. 2 officers entered, followed by a plainclothes agent holding a federal warrant. Jason turned ghost white. "What is this?" Robert barked, standing up as well. The SEC agent replied calmly. "Jason Winters and Robert Winters, you're under investigation for wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and corporate embezzlement. You're coming with us." Jason lunged toward Michaela, voice shaking. "You're crazy." Michaela didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye. Nina, I'm finally sane. Jason's face twisted as the cuffs clicked. He looked to his father, who now stood frozen, pale with realization that the empire he built had just crumbled because of the women he tried to control. Clara didn't look at her son as he passed. Instead, she took Michaela's hand. You ended it, she whispered. After the arrests, the room remained stunned. Rachel stepped forward, addressing the board. I'll need to audit every policy Jason and Robert touched, and while we're at it, reinstate my contract. The chairwoman nodded. Effective immediately. 3 days later, the newspaper published a front-page exposé, Power, Paper Trails and Patriarchy, The Winter's Legacy Unmasked. Byline, Michaela Anderson. Rachel returned to the newsroom. Clara found a small apartment outside the city and began painting again for the first time in years. Sarah, from Denver, texted her gratitude and freedom. And Michaela, she reclaimed her name. She sat in her old office, once offered and turned down, now reclaimed on her terms. She framed the receipt from Cafe Luna above her desk, not as a symbol of betrayal, but as the first breadcrumb that led her home, to herself. She didn't scream, she didn't burn it all down. She exposed the truth, and made sure the world listened. The story spreads like wildfire. Within hours of the exposé's release, national outlets pick it up. Interviews are requested, panels are formed. Michaela's inbox floods with messages from journalists, activists, survivors, people who recognize their own experiences in her words. The subject line repeated over and over. Clara quietly moves in with her sister in Vermont, far from the glare of reporters and lawyers. She begins a small community painting class, rediscovering the creativity she buried decades ago. In her first email to Michaela from her new address, she writes, "You gave me back my voice. Now I'll use it." Sarah starts over in Denver, far from Jason and the Winter's legacy. She emails Michaela a photo of her first day at her new job, standing in front of a nonprofit that supports women in finance. Her message is simple. Clean slate. Clean soul. Rachel, now reinstated and promoted to executive editor, becomes a powerful advocate for women in journalism. She makes it a mission to protect whistleblowers, encouraging internal protocols that make retaliation harder and truth-selling safer. As for Michaela, she's offered a new investigative beat: corporate fraud and psychological abuse. She launches a groundbreaking series titled Behind the Smile: How Gaslighting Shapes Power. The series unpacks emotional manipulation in offices, marriages, and leadership structures. Each piece goes viral. Each one strikes a chord. Letters pour in from nurses, tech workers, teachers, attorneys, people whose self-worth was dismantled by those they trusted. Michaela reads every story, often crying alone at night, remembering the moments when she doubted her own memories. Now, she is the one affirming others. Her words aren't just reporting, they're recognition. The paper nominates her for a National Journalism Award. She declines the spotlight for now. She wants the work to speak louder than the applause. One evening, after an exhausting but fulfilling day, Michaela scrolls through her old photos. There it is, her and Jason, standing on the balcony of their honeymoon suite in Sedona. She stares at it for a moment. It no longer holds power. The manipulation behind his smile, the illusion of happiness, the weight of silence, it's all been stripped away. She presses delete. The image vanishes. A release. She opens her laptop and begins to type a new column. The headline is short but sharp. Trust your instincts. They're trying to tell you something. Her fingers fly across the keys, not out of urgency, but confidence. Her voice is clear. Her mind is her own. Her truth is no longer hidden beneath someone else's narrative. She's not just a journalist anymore. She's not just a survivor. She's a force. A woman who stared gaslighting in the face, named it, exposed it, and refuse to be broken by it. As the city sleeps outside her window, Michaela writes into the night, not with fear, but with purpose. Because somewhere out there, another woman is questioning herself. And Michaela's words will reach her. Just in time. Jason does what manipulators always do when cornered. He rewrites the narrative. From his jail cell, he releases a statement through his lawyer. He claims the recordings were taken out of context. He says Sarah was coerced. He insists Michaela is mentally unstable and had a history of paranoid behavior. The words are familiar, but now no one believes them. Clara testifies with unwavering composure. She recounts decades of silence, of enabling, of fear. She tells the court that Michaela did what she never could, pull back the curtain. Her voice doesn't shake. Her truth is finally out. Sarah takes the stand too, calm, factual, and unflinching. She confirms the shell companies, the laundered money, the manipulation. The prosecution's case is airtight. Jason sits expressionless as the judge reads the verdict, guilty on all counts. 15 years in federal prison. Michaela watches quietly from the gallery. There is no satisfaction in the sentence, only clarity. Jason no longer evokes rage or fear. He is simply a man whose web of lies finally collapsed under the weight of truth. Back at her desk, Michaela closes the tab with the court updates. Her new column is due in 3 hours, and this one isn't about Jason. It's about systemic patterns of gaslighting in corporate environments. Her research is sharp, her voice sharper. Her byline now carries weight not just as a journalist, but as a woman who lived what she now exposes. Her apartment is quiet. The air is still. She walks to the kitchen, pours herself a cup of coffee, and sits down with her notes. A candle flickers in the corner, the only light aside from her screen. She's alone, but never more grounded. Her therapist, her real therapist, once told her that healing is a spiral, not a line. Michaela understands that now. Some days are still heavy. Sometimes she dreams about those confusing arguments, about the nights she lay awake, trying to remember what was real. But those dreams don't control her. They remind her. She's not that woman anymore. The woman who once feared she was losing her mind now helps others reclaim theirs. The woman who once whispered in her own head, "Maybe I'm just being sensitive," now shouts the truth on national platforms. The final chains of Jason's control are broken. A text comes in, Rachel checking in before the next story launches. Michaela replies with a smile and closes her laptop for the evening. For once, she's not chasing a headline. She's living one. Her new life isn't defined by survival. It's defined by ownership. Of her story, of her power, of her future. She is no longer someone's wife. She is Michaela Anderson. And she's finally home. Michaela Anderson's story isn't just a cheating story. It's a blueprint for survival, a warning about gaslighting, and a testament to the power of reclaiming your voice. What started as a quiet gut feeling spiraled into years of manipulation, emotional sabotage, and calculated deceit. Jason didn't just cheat. He tried to erase her instincts, bury her truth, and use her reputation to cover his own criminal empire. But Michaela didn't break. She investigated, she documented, she exposed him with precision, not rage. She turned every whisper of doubt into hard evidence. She took the narrative back, not just for herself, but for everyone who's ever been told they were overreacting. If you've ever second-guessed yourself because someone told you your truth wasn't real, Michaela's journey is proof. You are not the problem. You are the threat to theirs. If this cheating story moved you, if it stirred something deep inside, don't let it end here. Tap the like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their strength. And hit subscribe to Veiled Fury for more stories that peel back the lies and shine a light on resilience, justice, and truth. Because your story matters. Your instincts are valid. And your voice deserves to rise above the noise. See you in the next video.